Next, we're going to go over the gear that you'll need to practice these skills. You'll notice I've built, obviously, this anchor board. We use this for demonstrations at outdoor adventures and at the climbing facility. You don't need to have something like this at home during the quarantine in order to use. You can simply use the back of a chair or a couple of nails in the wall, or maybe the knobs on your cabinets in your kitchen, anything like that to just stick a carabiner over or clip to in order to simulate a couple of anchors, 2 or 3 anchors is perfectly fine. That's all you really need. Likewise, if you don't have carabiners and you want to use clothespins instead in that moment just to practice, that's fine, or a piece of string or something like that. Now, if you have your climbing gear at home and you want to pull out some locking carabiners and slings and that sort of thing, that would be great too. Whatever you have, you can practice with. Just remember, obviously, when you go to the crag or when you go to the climbing wall, to use this equipment on a live weight or a live human weight, you can't be using that other stuff. You've got to use climbing gear that's tested, climbing gear that's UIAA approved, and climbing gear that is meant to hold a live human body weight. And it's up to you to manage that risk. It's up to every climber to manage those decisions for themselves about what gear they use, how old their gear is, whether they're inspecting their gear, and whether to trust their life to it ultimately. Let's talk about the gear that we want to use. You'll see I have a length of climbing rope that I'm going to demonstrate with, or that I'm going to use for the in place of a full length rope. I'm going to clip that here. In my hands, you'll see a couple of other things. One is a couple of shoulder length runners. We're going to deploy these in a minute, and you're going to see the full length of them. They're about 24 inches long, and I have 2 different ones. One is blue and one is gray, just to help illustrate the techniques that we're going to show to use with them. So 2 shoulder length runners. 4 locking carabiners. You might need as many as 6, depending on how big of an anchor you're building or how many legs the anchor has. But locking carabiners, again, these are screw lock carabiners that are UIAA approved. And I have a couple of different cordelettes here. Both of these are 7mm climb spec cord. One is longer than the other. This one is about 20 feet long, and this one's about 15 feet long. I would say as long as you have anything between 12 and 25 feet, you should be pretty good with a cordelette. You can buy these from climbing manufacturers. You can buy them online. You can buy them from your local gear store. But what you're looking for is 7mm cord that is climbing spec. And that should really be all the gear that you need to practice these skills. Let's talk a little bit about how to evaluate any anchor, and a little terminology about the different parts of the anchor that we're going to build today. Maybe if we zoom in on this anchor system that I have set up, this is a 3-bolt cordelette system. You'll notice that there are 3 different anchor placements that I've clipped to. At each anchor placement I have a locking carabiner, and you'll see that each of those anchor placements radiates down to a central point here. These are referred to as the legs of an anchor. Any good anchor is going to have 2 to 3 to maybe even more legs on it. Typically in sport climbing that you're going to find in the Austin area, you're going to build a 2 to 3 leg anchor on 2 to 3 bolts. Now where those legs terminate and it ends, you'll find here 2 locking carabiners. That point where your rope runs through the carabiners and the terminus of the anchor is referred to as the master point. Any anchor has a master point. All right, so we've got our legs, we've got our master point, we've got the locking carabiners. Now, how are we going to evaluate these anchors? I'm going to give you a simple acronym to use, and that's RENE, R-E-N-E, and it stands for redundancy, equalization, and no extension. So in this anchor, that's what you would use, and we'll look at how to use that acronym when we return and when we look at each of the types of anchors that we built. But the acronym again is redundancy, equalization, and no extension. Redundancy simply means if one part fails, do other parts hold, right? Equalization means that when it's pulled on, do the different legs of the anchor hold an equal amount of weight. And no extension stands for if any of the part of the anchor fails, does the master point extend a dramatic distance down, or does it stay relatively in the same spot where it currently was? So Renee, redundancy, equalization, and no extension.